Hello, welcome to Team SNG deck profile. Today guys, we're going to be doing an updated Codetalker's profile. This hasn't been updated on the channel for a while, and seeing as Code Generator has been released in Toon Chaos, I felt it was time to update this. Now this is a budget variant of the deck, so we don't actually have Access Codetalker, but you could certainly run him in this deck if you wanted to. He would definitely be a fantastic addition, and I would highly recommend it if you have access to him. If you don't, this is a variation without him. While I've got your attention, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I would like to ask you guys to leave us a comment down below, leave us a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this. Also, check out the team's Facebook page. Link to that will be in the description below. And if you do like what you see in this deck, I highly recommend checking out the test hands video, which will also be linked in the description below. Now that will be coming out later this week, so if you're watching this early, hey, thanks for watching early. But make sure you come back to check out that test hands video later in the week. Alright, so the way this deck basically works is it utilizes lots of different extenders that the Cyberse type has access to. And it utilizes them in a way that lets you build multiple link monsters that can form a bit of an interesting lock among themselves in the Codetalkers, but also let you get into multiple different boss monsters, so you can actually go into boss monsters outside of the Codetalker archetype if you'd like. So, with that being said, let's just get into this. First of all, we run the baby Codetalkers, the first of which is the new Code Generator. We run 3 copies of this. If you have a Cyberse monster on the field and would use it to link off for a Codetalker monster, you can use this as material from your hand. If this is sent to the graveyard as link material, you can send from the deck to the grave a Cyberse monster with 1200 or less attack. If this card is used as link material while on the field, you can add that card to your hand instead of sending it to the grave. So we do run a target for this. We don't run very many targets that are specifically fantastic in the grave. One that I would recommend will be Dotscaper, if you like that idea. I run something else, which I prefer, because it links off and allows us to build much more consistent boards later on. The next Codetalker that we run is 3 copies of Microcoder. Now, Microcoder is basically got the same effect as Code Generator in that he can be used as link material from the hand for the linked summon of a Codetalker monster. If he's sent to the grave as link material though, he can let you search a Signet spell or trap from the deck to the hand. So this can be really useful to help us combo off later. The other thing that he can do is he can, if he's on the field, when he's used as link material, he lets you search a monster from deck to hand. So you can add any Cyberse monster you need. Next we run 2 copies of Code Radiator. Code Radiator is really useful for going second, but not so much for going first. Going second, what she'll let you do is you can use her from the hand as material for a Codetalker yet again. If she's used as link material, you can target 1 card on your opponent's side of the field, lower its attack to 0, and negate its effects. If she's used on the field as link material for a Codetalker monster, you can target 2 monsters on your opponent's side of the field and negate their effects and lower their attacks to 0. So she's really good for breaking boards if you have to go second with this deck. And that's why we run 2 copies of her and not 3. Alright, so that does it for the baby Codetalkers. Next we're going to talk about the normal summons that we run. We run quite a few normal summons. They all do slightly different things for us. So we'll talk about them as we go. The first one that we run is 3 copies of Nightmare Corruptor Ibli. This stops us from getting Nibiru. That's already valuable to me, because you are going to be doing a lot of summoning with this deck. The other thing that this does, though, is it does let us recur Cyberse link monsters from our graveyard. So if we see her sort of turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, we can use her to start recurring stuff from the grave. Seeing as most of what we run in our extra deck is Cyberse, she can be very valuable to us late game, allowing us to recur from our grave and take things away from our opponent, in the sense that once she's linked away, you manage to put her on your opponent's side of the field and turn off their ability to special summon, which keeps us safe from Nibiru. The next normal summon we run is 2 copies of Foreman Skipper, and this partners really well with Parallel Exceed. So, Foreman Skipper, when it's summoned, you can reveal a link monster in your extra deck, and his name becomes that. When he's used as link material, he lets you search out a level 5 or higher Cyberse monster. Now, we do run a few other targets for him, but the target you're typically going to be searching for is Parallel Exceed. If a monster is link summoned while Parallel Exceed is in your hand, you get to special summon Parallel Exceed from your hand. If Parallel Exceed is special summoned from your hand, you get to special summon a Parallel Exceed from the deck. So, Foreman Skipper is effectively a link 1 that turns into a link 3 because of the fact it lets you add Parallel Exceed to the hand, and then all you have to do is find a way to link summon that link 1 into a link 2. And Parallel Exceed will then put 2 more bodies on the board, meaning that you actually have the material for a link 4, all off of just Foreman Skipper and some way to link up whatever Foreman Skipper links into. The next normal summon we run is Lady Debug. This is probably one of the best normal summons, maybe apart from Nightmare Corruptibility, in that this lets you search out any Cyberse monster that is level 3 or lower. So you can search out Microcoder. And the nice thing with this is if you were to normal summon this, search out Microcoder, use Microcoder and Lady Debug to link into a link 2 in your extra deck, then Microcoder will let you search out one of our spells that is really valuable for getting the game moving for us. And that's really useful to us because it does allow us to basically continue comboing off. Also, this card can be special summoned later in the turn actually, and still get its search effect, which can be really valuable too. The next monster that we run is just a generic sort of Cyberse extender. We run a few of these. We've run a few low level and a few higher levels. The first lower level one that we run is 2 copies of Cyberse Converter. If all monsters you control are Cyberse monsters, special summon this from the hand. You can only do this once per turn, but hey. The next is Link Infraflyer. This will let us special summon this card to a zone a Link monster points to. And finally, we run 3 copies of Backup Secretary. If you control a Cyberse monster, you can special summon this card. So this is basically just a generic extender that you can use at any point. But again, you can only use that once per turn as well. So you need to be careful about it. You could effectively go 2, 2, and 2 if you wanted. But I like these ratios because this is the easiest to special summon. Then followed by this, followed by this. Next, to dump with our code generator, I run Sea Archiver. As I say, you could run Dotscaper. Dotscaper will special summon himself directly from the grave. I like Sea Archiver because Sea Archiver, if in your hand, can also special summon itself the same way. So if a monster is normal summon or special summoned while this is in the grave to the zone a Link monster points to, you can special summon this card from the grave. If this is in your hand, you can normal summon it from your hand. The reason I prefer this over Dotscaper is Dotscaper effectively acts as a normal summon if you end up with it in your hand. So I prefer to have Sea Archiver because it does allow us to extend more. The first high level extender we run is the Gravebuster. We banish 2 Cyberse monsters from our graveyard to special summon this. The second is Scriptron. You can banish a Cyberse monster from your graveyard except for this to special summon this. The nice thing about this is when this is used as link material, you get to add back to your deck one of your banished Cyberse monsters, so that's really good for us. And the third high level one that we run is Cyberse White Hat. If you control 2 or more monsters with the same type, you can special summon this card from your hand. So this basically just 3 high level extenders that basically just put more bodies on board for us to use as link material. And finally, for monster lineup, we run a few Attic Nisters. The first Attic Nister monster we run is Gachari Attic Nister, or Gachiri Attic Nister. What this does is it is basically the ultimate protection for your board. It protects all Cyberse monsters on your side of the field from being destroyed once per turn. The other thing that this does is you can target a Cyberse monster on your side of the field, negate its effects to special summon this. So now you're putting this board on the field for basically no cost, because you can always link that monster off. Then what you're going to do is you're going to protect everything on your field. Also, if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target a face-up monster that you control, and it is unaffected by all other card effects until the end of your opponent's turn. So you can then use this as link material and target one of your monsters on the field, and that monster will be unaffected by card effects. Meaning that basically this is the ultimate protection that you can put on the board. The other Attic Nister that we run is Gasari Attic Nister. Gasari Attic Nister will special summon himself from your hand if one of your link monsters is destroyed. It can also inflict damage to your opponent when one of your link monsters destroys an opponent's monster by battle, equal to that monster's original attack, and if it ends up in the grave, you can banish it from the grave to change the attack of a link monster on your side of the field being attacked and your opponent's monster to 3,000, meaning that they will crash into each other, but at the end of the day, you're going to end up taking something off of your opponent's board that maybe you weren't able to originally. Alright, and that does it for the monster lineup. Let's talk about the spells. The first spell we run is the bread and butter of the deck, and that is Access Codetalker. If you special summon a Codetalker monster from the extra deck, you can search your deck for a Cyberse monster that shares the attribute of the Codetalker monster. You can do this once per turn for each attribute, meaning if you're summoning different attribute Codetalkers, you're searching your deck multiple times, and we run plenty of different attributes. So you will be doing a lot of searching, probably searching for those extenders that'll let you get into more Codetalkers, letting you search more, and so on, and so on, and so on. The next spell we run is 2 copies of Cynet Optimization. If your Codetalker monster battles, your opponent can't activate card effects until the end of the battle phase. Also, if this has been activated, during your main phase, you can normal summon an additional Cyberse monster that turn. So this basically lets us utilize those multiple normal summons that we talked about, but it also does protect our Codetalkers even more. The final spell that we run is Cynet Backdoor. The Cynet Backdoor is really useful because it does let us have our bigger monsters dodge effects, seeing as it is a quick play spell. We can use its ability to banish a monster from our side of the field and net a search off of that to avoid any of our opponent's effects that might take our big bodies off the board. We also then get that body back during our next standby phase by special summoning it. So that does it for our spells. Let's next talk about the traps. So the first trap we run is 3 copies of Cynet Conflict. So yeah, Cynet Conflict is just an omni-negate as long as you have a Codetalker on your side of the field. So it's basically just the generic counter trap that all archetypes seem to get these days. However, this does banish upon negation, so it maybe makes things harder for your opponents to get back their resources. And the final trap card that we run in the main deck is 2 copies of Crackdown. Taking stuff is fun, holding on to stuff is fine. We can link off anything that we take, so that gives us extra bodies and lets us extend on our turn. That does it for the main deck. On to the extra deck. First, let's talk about the fact that this entire extra deck is made up consistently of link monsters. There's no synchros, no fusions, or no XCs. The first thing we run is a couple link 1s. The first is Salamangreat Almirage, and the second is Relinquished Anima. We do run a few level 1s, so Relinquished Anima can come up. And we do run a lot of monsters that we're going to normal summon, that are going to be normal summoned, that are going to be under 1,000 attack, meaning that Salamangreat Almirage lets us use them. If we have Microcroder on field, we can use Microcroder to go into Salamangreat Almirage or Relinquished Anima. We can use Nightmare Corruptor Ibley to go into Salamangreat Almirage. We can use Foreman Skipper to go into Anima or Almirage. Depending on whatever it is we need, we can pick and choose which Link one we go into. Next comes the Link 2s. We run 2 different Link 2s and 2 copies of each. The first is 2 copies of Codetalker. The Codetalker is just 2 effect monsters, generic material, which is nice, and he gains 500 attack for each monster that he points to. Also, he cannot be destroyed by card effect or battle whenever he points to a monster. So you can typically use him to protect himself, but really what we're tending to use him for is to climb into our Link 3s. The other one, the Link 2 that we run, is Codetalker Inverted. Now this is another Link 2. This one will let you special summon a Cyberse monster from your hand. Now this partnered up with Cynet Codec. When this is summoned, will let you search out Lady Debug. Next, on to the actual big Codetalkers. The first is Trance Codetalker. We run 2 of him. Basically, he lets you special summon some stuff back from the grave. He also grants 500 attack to him and a card he is co-linked with, so they both gain 500 attack, which is really nice. So he again lets you extend. Typically you're going to go something like Codetalker, and then you're going to use Microcroder or maybe one of the other baby talkers to link off with the Codetalker to go into this. Then you're going to use this to bring back the Codetalker, and that's how this deck really can sort of combo start. The reason we run 2 is because this deck does have a hard time if their board is broken, and so having a second one does allow us to sort of do the whole thing twice. Next is Access Codetalker. He turns off an opponent's zone, or a monster zone, equal to the number of monsters in the extra monster zones. The other reason we run this, though, is it protects any monster it points to, and it gives any monster it points to 500 attack. So typically what you're going to do is you're going to make this underneath this, and then this gains 1000 attack, this gains 500 attack, this can't be destroyed by card effects. So that's typically what you're going to do. Maybe to the left of this, you'll put Shooting Codetalker. Shooting Codetalker will let you attack multiple times at the cost of it losing 400 attack. And at the end of the battle phase, you get to draw cards equal to the number of monsters that Shooting Codetalker destroyed by battle. So you can basically attack for every monster this is linked to, and at the same time you can also draw cards to gain resources back for main phase 2. The final Codetalker that we run is Power Codetalker. Now I don't really go into Power Codetalker much. Really the reason I'm running this is it gives us another attribute which lets us search out our Degrade Buster, because typically if I am going into Power Codetalker, I've managed to go pretty much full combo and build a board with maybe Trance Codetalker pointing to Access Codetalker pointing to Shooting Codetalker, and I've still got the ability to keep extending, so I go into Power Code, search out my Degrade Buster, and then use Degrade Buster's effect to banish 2 and put another body on board. So that's typically why I go into Power Codetalker, but other than that, I'm really not going into Power Code that much. I do find he doesn't do a whole lot for the deck in terms of raw power. His whole thing, though, is that he can target a card on the field and negate its effect, so you can turn off something on your opponent's side of the field if you've had to go second. And he can double his attack by tributing something he points to. So you could definitely use him to help you break up an opponent's board, but typically you're not really using him for that. You're using him more as an ability to search out your Degrade Buster. Alright, so that does it for the Codetalkers. On to some of the other things we run in the extra deck. 1, Trigate Wizard. Removal, negation, what do I need to say? It's really good. You can sometimes put this in the position of Access Codetalker in the thing combo I talked about just a minute ago. And if you can do that and he can get co-linked 3 times, then he's an absolute powerhouse that opponents have to be constantly wary of. As for big boss monsters that this deck can pump out, Bullsword Dragon's not a problem if you have to go second. Really easy to get into this for us, and that lets us just run over our opponents potentially. We can also potentially use 2 Link 2s going into Mekk-Knight Crusader Avermax. Again, another really good option for us. And finally, something new to be added to this deck is the Arrival Cyberse Nister. This card can be an absolute powerhouse in this deck. It's really easy to get enough material on the board to go into this, and this gains attack for every monster used as his material, and he can basically use monsters of different attributes. It's really easy to get a 4,000 attack Cyberse, the Arrival Cyberse Nister on board in your first turn, and then just run over your opponents in your second. He's unaffected by card effects, and also he acts as spot removal, allowing you to destroy stuff on the field and generate tokens on your side of the field, which can then be used to further extend your plays. If you've had to go second, this can definitely be a way to help you break your opponent's board. If I had Access Codetalker, I would likely switch out probably the Boral Sword or the Avermax for Access Codetalker. That being said though, I could definitely see the argument for taking out Trigate Wizard for Access Code as well. So that does it for the extra deck. So what I found I really love about this deck is its ability to play from the hand. The ability to use your baby Codetalkers to effectively extend from the hand and continue to generate advantage with Microcoder searching stuff out, with Code Generator setting up the graveyard. You do find yourself in a really good situation, especially if you can find yourself with Signet Codec on the board, because this will continuously gain you advantage throughout your turn while building a massive board that can put up some interesting power locks and some interesting negations. The other benefit of running a Codetalker deck is that we do have access to Signet Conflict, which can effectively turn off anything our opponent wants to do and give us one additional negate. This negate, coupled with the ease of access into the engine with Codetalker, Codetalker Inverted, Trance Codetalker, X Codetalker, and Shooting Codetalker, this really is a powerhouse play. This deck has so many easy combos to get ourselves to the Link 2s, which, especially when coupled with Signet Codec, can get us into the Link 3s, who can then feed back the Link 2s, who can then search out the baby Codetalkers, who can so on and so forth, and just spiral and spiral and spiral until your opponent is facing down a board with not 1, not 2, not 3, but maybe even 4 or 5 boss monsters. Okay, they aren't the biggest of boss monsters because they are all Codetalkers, but your opponent is still looking at 3 or 4 things that they've got to get rid of before they can even think about damaging you. And you're still able to set up back rows like Signet Conflict, and you're able to potentially set up boss monsters that can just end games on their own in Avermax, Boral Sword, and the Arrival Cyberse Nister. With that all being said, while this deck is missing Access Codetalker, there's no reason you can't run it if you've got access to him. I unfortunately don't, and therefore I'm playing a version without. But in all honesty, these 3 can do an okay job of wiping out an opponent's board, and the Codetalkers, the base Codetalkers, can do a fantastic job of gaining you the advantage required to really run over anything your opponent might send in your direction. So, with that all being said, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I hope you stuck around this long. If you have, you've clearly enjoyed this, so do leave us a like. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Keep an eye on the channel, because there will be test hands for this deck profile going up later this week. And I guess at this point, all I can really say is I'll see you guys at the next video.